people need to be aware of where does our audience live. I could tell you, hey, go to this social channel, but if your audience isn't there, if your future customers aren't there, it really doesn't matter.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. My name is Michael T. Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host, Tyler Kelly. Today, we are at the EQ Leadership Lab, and we're here in the EQ Leadership Lounge. So this is the day before the MDMC conference, and we are very excited to be here. We have a special guest today. His name is Morgan Ingram. Morgan, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, excited to be here, guys. Thanks so much.
So Morgan is the Director of Execution and Evolution at J-Barrel Sales Training. He focuses on delivering to sales development teams to enhance their skill sets and performance. You've also been mentioned as one of the top 50 sales leaders to follow in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
One of LinkedIn's top voices in sales. And your work has been featured in Forbes, Sales Hacker, the HubSpot blog, the Harvard Business Review, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. And more. Yeah, thank you. Super excited to be here.
So, from what I can tell, you're pretty prolific on LinkedIn. You're a LinkedIn all-star.
That's what the profile says. So that's what they tell me when I log in. So yeah, LinkedIn has been catalyst for my career across the board. I really truly do believe that personal brand is super important for everyone. Some people didn't take it seriously, but I think a lot of people take it in the wrong light. They see, hey, I got to go create a YouTube channel or a podcast, or I have to go do this blog post. I think all it really comes down to is understanding your audience. How do you actually communicate with them effectively, and find out how you actually do that the right way. Like we're doing this podcast right now. A lot of people should probably actually start that because they're actually better at that. Or some people are really good at writing good questions in the comments. We all have to think about that in a way, but for LinkedIn, for me, was the way to get myself out there with the voice that I believe that I have based on what I was learning and being practical in that sense.
Now, you've been on LinkedIn for a while.
Yeah.
Would you say it's too late for somebody to build an audience on LinkedIn? Like, are all the good spots taken? Or is it something that even, this far into the game that somebody could start?
I think it's an ongoing development. I don't think it's too late to start. I think it's going to be too late to start if you don't ever start, right? And you're like 10 years later, like, I wish I was on LinkedIn. I never try to live with the fear of never trying to do something or the pain of regret. So I think right now is actually the best time to start understanding who's actually successful, why are they successful, and really what it comes down to is the things that you talk about is what are you doing on a daily basis. I think a lot of people want to copy people or copy their framework and talk about something they don't know instead of being like, this is what I do on a daily basis. And I'm only talking from experience and from what I'm learning and from my obstacles and challenges. This is a perfect time.
So tell me how you kind of figured all that out, and how can someone figure that out for themselves?
Yeah, so it actually, funny enough, derived from, have you guys seen WWE?
Yeah.
You have fans? Yeah. Okay, The Rock.
Okay.
Right? This is my guy, right?
Branding expert, by the way, right?
Branding expert galore, right? Like he's in movies that aren't even that good and he's getting paid billions of dollars for it, right? So as I was watching the WWE, I realized everyone is a great wrestler, but there's few people who can do brands really well. Same thing with NBA, NFL. So as I was watching sports, as I was watching WWE, I realized that's the same thing that we're in this world right now. There's a lot of great business professionals, there's a lot of great sales professionals, leaders and marketers, but the ones that truly stand out who have an identity are the ones who actually understand their brand and how to effectively communicate with their audience. And so that was the thing that I found out was how can I effectively communicate with the audience based on success stories that I've seen in other industries like in sports and WWE, and then I translated that to when I got in a sales development rep role, which is reaching out to net new accounts, cold calling. I just took that experience, everything I was learning, and just created a YouTube channel around it, and that's what helped me accelerate from that LinkedIn perspective and started getting the notice, started getting awareness, and moved me into the role I'm in today.
And so you've got hundreds of videos out there, like on sales on YouTube, is that right?
On YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about that, like building a YouTube channel, sharing that content, like you just jump in just right off the gate, or like how's that work?
Just bought a camera and I was like, here we go. So it started off about 5 to 7 years ago. Started making Facebook videos. Then I went to Periscope, which is live streaming, and then I just started a YouTube channel when I realized, hey, sales development there was no voice in it. I read an article and it said, hey, an SDR, sales development rep, should start a YouTube channel, and there was no one else who did it. So I saw that as a white space for me to be like, I need to start creating videos on this topic right now. And so from there, that's what really helped accelerate my brand, because I knew that if I just talked from experience and I just said, hey guys, like, I'm doing this role, here's some things that are working, here's some things that suck for me, here's where I'm really facing challenges, it made me more open as a person to other people, but also giving you success along the way. So it wasn't me telling you, hey, I'm in this ivory tower, this is what you should do. It's like, I'm in it with you, but here's some things that I'm learning along the way. And I feel like that relatability is what helped me get to where I am today, and what's going to continuously help me across the board.
So when it comes to a personal brand, like we've already kind of talked about a couple different networks, LinkedIn, YouTube, and obviously Facebook, all those things have their own kind of best practices or things you should do. And I think a lot of times people focus on that. I'm on YouTube, tell me do X, 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 and X. But I'm assuming from your experience, there are things that transcend the do X on this network and do X, like the components of a personal brand.
Yeah.
What are those components that you find that transcend all those networks that people need to have?
So is it for the person to understand what content they're posting, or to understand the narrative on the social media?
I would say if you looked at a person's personal brand in general, so like you've got a personal brand, there's things that you're probably putting out on purpose. You're doing certain things.
Right. Absolutely.
And if those things are missing, then someone's not going to get traction no matter what network they're on.
Got it. So I think I always scale it back and tell people, and you all probably thought of the same thing as you start this podcast, is what are our strengths lie? Like, what's the most important? So I always tell people, hey, what are you really good at? So for me, I'm really good at making videos. I'm really good at speaking in front of people, and I'm good at like an audio podcastable form. If you told me to go write something, I'm the wrong person. So if it was like we're on an island, say, hey, we're gonna go write something, we're all gonna die. Like it's just not gonna work. So, but I know that's not my forte. So I think where people first have to start is, where are you really good at? So if you're really good at making videos, you should start with a YouTube channel. If you're really good at writing, you should start a blog post, and then let those strengths move into other avenues. So for me, it was like start off with videos. Then I was like, second best, audio. Then I was like, written. Well, I've already done so many videos, I can just listen to what I said and then just write that out. So I think you have to figure out what your avenue is. And like you said, yes, on YouTube, I'm a certain way. Then on LinkedIn, I'm a certain way. If I'm doing an Instagram story, it's different. I think we have to respect each narrative and each story of each platform, just as like if you go to another country, you have to respect their culture. It's the same thing.
So I want to shift gears, because the content that you share is all sales content, which means that you're pretty good at sales content, meaning you know sales. So let's talk about sales.
Yep, let's do it.
You've got a shirt on that says "Keep Dialing."
Yep.
So that's old school right there. That's just pick up the phone and just dial for dollars. Never stop dialing.
There you go.
How has sales changed, or has it? Over the last 5 or so years.
That's a really great question. And to go back to the keep dialing, it is about that. Dialing for dollars, but also at the same time, it's a mindset as well, as what I tell people. Like, keep dialing as in like keep trying out new approaches, keep trying new processes, keep learning as well, because in sales you have to learn every single day. There's stuff that's changing across the board, which goes into answer your question. Let's talk about how people are doing video selling now. People are making videos and sending to each other. 20, 30 years ago, if you did that, or if you tried to do that, it just wouldn't work. We're also integrating social aspects, which we talked about. But to get even more granular than that, the way that you have to sell someone is different. Like, I'll talk to someone on Wall Street and they're like super aggressive, they made a ton of money from there, and now he's in a B2B sales space and he's like, I can't even do those tactics anymore. They don't work. I have to do a consultative sell because the buyers become more educated. So I think the real change is just the mindset in the buyer. And we have to be more consultative and be a guide in that process, more so than trying to shove it down people's throat and be aggressive type A that most salespeople are known for. So I think that's where the real change is that we have to really use those insights. We have to actually guide them. We have to be more methodical in our process. We can't just go through it and be like, okay, well, they said they want to buy, well, I'm going to continuously shove down the throat, call after call after call. It's completely changed in that dynamic.
So speaking of sales, what, in your opinion, is, and in your work, I know you travel the country and you do a lot of education on sales. So, like, what is one of the things that, like, in the startup and innovation world that you see as lacking on the sales forefront for companies?
I think when it comes down to startups, I'll start there, is the actual process of actually helping the prospect or the potential buyer understand where they're coming from. So what I mean by that, I did a training last week and they said, hey, we have a problem with people understanding who we even are. And I said, well, because you're taking a step that you shouldn't be taking. You're trying to sell the product and solution, but you're not telling them what you're actually about. There's a lot of products that come in here and they're a new type of market. They're a completely different market gap that they have to address. I said you have to educate them and then you have to sell them. If I don't educate you on what the market even is or even where you're even trying to go as an entire unit, then it doesn't matter. I'm selling you the solution. So I think a lot of people miss the education part of like, this is what we're holistically trying to do. This is the keywords, this is the term, and then moving into selling you on like why that's important. I can't just sell you a solution you don't know where it fits. I think a lot of people miss that. And I think another big thing is that people don't really truly understand the challenges and priorities of the people they're reaching out to. Most people that come into a sales role, they just know, hey, I'm supposed to reach out to the C-level suite, the VP of marketing, and the director of marketing. But they don't really understand why their solution directly correlates to those people. So you have a lot of people doing calls that are generic, emails that are generic, touching base and checking in doesn't really work. But if you actually know why these people should be buying your solution or invest into it and you understand the results, that's where you can see that real impact. So I think those are the two main gaps that at least I see across the board. I'd say if I added another thing, it's cold calling. Just a lot of people aren't confident on the phone because they just don't know what to say when they get on the phone, and they say all the other things you shouldn't be saying from an intro standpoint. So it just makes your calls bad. That's why you don't want to do them. So I would say those are the main things that I see from trainings, from talking to people. Those are gaps in the marketplace right now that I feel like a lot of people are trying to address with the content that's being made.
So understanding the prospect and shaping your product or service in a way that makes sense to their end goals or their objectives.
Absolutely.
And then once you understand that, making contact. I mean, picking up the phone, sending an email that's relevant. How many times with the cold calling, let's say I've got the perfect solution for you and I want to get through to you, but obviously you're not picking up the phone because you don't recognize my number. Mm-hmm. So when do I quit? How do I get through? What's that?
Just keep dialing, man. You don't quit. I'm just kidding. No, obviously there's a process, right? So how I see it is it's a multi-touch. So you might do 4 phone calls, but you also have 4 emails. You also may do a direct mail campaign. You also may send a video. You also may do something on social. It's everything, because I just don't know how people react to certain things. I may be calling someone that doesn't answer any calls. I may call someone that actually answers all calls. I may be contacting someone who doesn't even read emails, but they answer everything on social. Across the board, I have no idea, but that's why you have to have a multi-touch approach. My recommendation for people is reaching out to someone for at least 20, 30 days. So that's a month and a half from a business standpoint, and then going and looking at other contacts to reach out to. And then if you don't get anyone in the account, you don't get a response, wait at least 3 to 4 months. That's at least a quarter to see if they realign priorities and initiatives to see if you can have another conversation. That's more so how I see it. You don't want to follow up with someone the entire year. They're not answering, they're replying. Maybe they're just not ready, maybe they're just not interested, or maybe it's just not the right time for them because maybe they're about to move to another role. So I think you just have to understand that, like, that's why you have a lot of prospect base. You're not only focused on one customer. That's why there has to be a different avenue of channels that you go after. It can't just be one.
So if another sales related question, if I'm a startup or I'm an organization, how do I attract the right kind of salesperson? Someone who I would assume is like yourself. They keep dialing. They understand their customers' needs, those sort of things.
I think it comes down to the questions. So the questions that we ask is the answers and the outcomes that we're going to get. So if you're not willing in the interview process to ask those hard questions that will filter out everyone else, then you're just going to ask those soft questions that are basically layup questions for everybody. So you can hire sales reps, but not the sales reps that you want. So I think when it comes down to startups is really understanding, okay, first of all, what type of sales rep do we want, right? Do you want type A sales reps that are hyper aggressive and super arrogant across the board? That's what you want? I mean, I don't think people want that, but some people might, right? Or you're like, hey, I want sales reps who are going to be productive. They're going to do their own learning. And each time that they learn, they're going to pass it on to their other reps. I think it's the understanding of the startup. What do you want your sales culture to be? And then from there, it's reverse engineering that to figure out what questions do we need to ask to get these right people. Because if you don't have a team of people that is aligned that way, you're going to have a top performer who's going to dilute the culture and be toxic. Even though he's a great performer, it's going to mess everybody else up because you built this other foundation. So I think people have to understand, like, really write it down, like, what are we looking at our sales culture? How do we want to see it? And then figure out what are those hard questions we need to ask to make sure that we have those people.
So you're saying they could be the best salesperson, but if they don't fit your company culture, it's not going to work.
Oh no, because then that person's probably going to be lackadaisical, right? They're not going to show up to the office. They're going to put other people down that are maybe your B reps, right? And your B reps go down to C reps, and then now you have one A player who's, you know, doing amazing, but all these other sales reps are, I don't want to work with this person. So then now you have a dissension in culture, and now you can't grow as a team because you only have one person closing, but that's not going to supplement the rest of the business if you have 5 other people who are being diluted by that one person.
So let's shift gears again and go back to, like, you talked about earlier that video being one of your skills.
Yeah.
And so, like, you pursued video because you're strong at that, as opposed to writing blogs, which you're not
Absolutely
so great at.
Absolutely not.
So in that world, and especially when you're trying to get your message for your brand out there, if there's people like you, what do they need to be looking towards? So, you know, we've got all these options for YouTube, LinkedIn. What's coming up that people need to be aware of and they need to be on the forefront of?
From a social platform standpoint, or just in general, what should people just be?
From a social or a video standpoint.
Yeah, I think as a whole, I think people need to be aware of where does our audience live. I always say that first, because I could tell you, hey, go to this social channel, but if your audience isn't there, if your future customers aren't there, it really doesn't matter, because the people you're talking to, they're not going to care. So I think it's understanding, like, what's your motive in building that brand? What's your motive in actually doing this? And then figure out where's that audience at. I'm just going to say right now, LinkedIn has the highest organic reach out of every platform right now. That's where a lot of people should be at. Instagram is still great, but they're starting to dilute. Facebook is just ads at this point. So if you don't have money to spend on ads, you don't want to be there. So I think it's really understanding, what do you truly want to impact? Like, who do you want to talk to? And understand that. And I'll provide my own context. Like, I know I'm reaching out to sales leaders and I'm selling to sales leaders. And a lot of my audience that my content pertains to is on LinkedIn. So I'm more aggressive on LinkedIn because I know that's where people I'm trying to talk to are at. I'm not going to be on Pinterest because the people on Pinterest don't care about what I'm saying. So I think it's understanding, what's your narrative, what do you want to accomplish, be in that lane, and be very tactical in how you approach that. For me, it was video, but again, it could be different for everybody else.
There's this new trend I'm noticing on LinkedIn where people just complain about LinkedIn. Have you noticed this?
Yeah, like how they complain on Facebook when people are doing that.
Like,
yeah,
this is not the way you use LinkedIn. Period. You know?
Yeah, exactly. The LinkedIn police.
Exactly. But, you know, as a founder of a company, I probably 99% of my messages on LinkedIn are just people trying to sell me stuff.
Yep.
So there is some legitimacy to, you know, not just like friending, connecting with somebody and then sending them a sales email, like, right, you know,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
next thing, right?
Yeah. I would. Yeah, so I want to touch on that. So there's I think we have to think about it as a holistic view. I like to think social media is like a spider web. So you have 99% of people reaching out to you. If you saw that person on social, their content, their face, you're more apt to respond to that person just because you've seen them around. And I think that's why it's important to at least build your brand in a certain way. I don't care if it's in the comments. I don't care if it's asking questions. I don't care if you make a video once a month. It's just putting yourself out there, because there is so many people doing it wrong. So I always tell people, everyone's heading in this direction. Do something a little bit different. You'll stand out, because so many people are doing it one way they think is right. Like sending a message like, I love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and then sending a novel the next, it's just not going to work. I don't think anyone's ever responded to that before. So I think what you have to think about is, like, how can I have my channel a little bit different? How can I do a different approach? Do I give a little bit more value? Do I have a different personalized note? I think that in return is what we need to start thinking about, because if we're thinking about it in a different way, then that whole outreach we're doing is just going to be diluted. So I'm hoping that answers the question of what you were looking for, because I really do believe, like, right now it's a great time to capitalize on social. I think it's a great time to capitalize in a sales motion, because there's so many people who are doing it wrong because they maybe don't have the right education. They don't have the right stuff. And even in sales, like, sales is like the least educated profession. So I mean, schools are now starting to teach it, but when I was in college, like, there was no sales class. There wasn't like, oh, I'm going to graduate from college, we're going to do more. I'm like, I'm going to go into sales. Like, no one was doing that after graduation. So I think now it'll start to happen, but because so many people are uneducated, they lead to uneducated responses, uneducated approaches. The ways that we go about it are just uneducated. And so I think the more that you try to learn, the more you're out there, the better you're going to be.
So on that note, I'm assuming if someone wants to get educated on sales, they should come look at your content.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of other content out there for sure. I mean, there's different sales podcasts. Like, there's the Real Sales Talk podcast, right? There's Sales Hacker. There's all sorts of places you can go. I just say to people, hey, look, the easiest way to think about it is grow 1% better every single day. That's it. What is one new tip that I can try out or learn? That's been and probably will be the backbone of my entire career. Is when I first started as an SDR, I'd read a blog post and I would do something. A lot of people read stuff and they go, oh, that's cool, and never execute on it. And I think that's also a big problem, is people are like, oh, that's awesome, but don't do it. It's just like with Instagram, like people say, oh, that's an amazing life that person has, but never tries to figure out how can I have that life as well.
So tell us where we can find you if somebody wants to engage with your content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do we find you online?
Yeah, so easiest way is Morgan J. Ingram. That's on LinkedIn, Twitter, and then the SDR Chronicles on YouTube and podcasts. So that's the best place to find me.
Awesome.
Yep.
Morgan, thanks for being on the show. This was fun, enlightening. I can't wait to go check out some of those videos and connect with you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. You can find details at vincafstl.org. You can also connect with us on social at WeAreSlam or at Venture Cafe STL.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams